So we're reviewing. Let's look at the date right now. The date is February 28th, 2022. 9.2 Mythic Plus tier list. Titles and Dratnos featuring Dorky. And we're going to see how this stacks up. Top comment. Saying to myself, I agree with Dorky and I think he's right, like he's not 10 times better than me. Yeah, I kind of vibe with that. I mean, I basically vibe with that same statement. All right, let's see.
Today we are joined by Dorky to bring you guys a Mythic Plus tier list ranking the tanks, DPS, and healer specializations. We agreed on some criteria, and also, if you're looking for the written versions of this kind of article, there are going to be written versions on Wowhead. We're going to separate out into tanks, healers, and DPS, so check that out for written justification.
Saying there's going to be written versions and talking about links and then not having them in the description.
Where we're going to go a little bit more in depth.
Amateur.
But first, let's talk about the justification that we've agreed upon. Drennis, do you want to start?
Yeah, so just first off, let's talk about where and what kind of keys we're looking at here. We're not looking at like MDI keys. We're not looking at weekly 15s. We're trying to look at the high key metagame because, you know, the MDI environment often looks pretty different. And weekly 15s, really everything does work there. And it's, you know, hugely just based on gear and skill at that point rather than spec. But for high keys, that's what we want to look at. And we want to look with double legendaries with 4 sets. With access to like whatever items people are desiring. So full build later into the patch is where we're kind of predicting.
And that's hard to predict too, by the way. That's really hard to predict. Also, it's kind of funny that to talk about what classes are going to be the best in plus 30 keys, because plus 30 keys don't matter for anybody. I'm sure Dorky mentions this in the video, but like to base the decision off what you want to play or like what you invite to your pug keys based off of what people are doing in plus 30 keys is like pretty ridiculous. Everyone does it, and that's why they're making this tier list based off of plus 30 keys. But it's actually so funny that like how actually little important it is that that's the case, and at the same time like how everyone cares. I think for DPS, it's probably more true than the other two roles, just because like they're picking the DPS that do the highest damage. But then at the same time, it's like, well, in a random pug key, like the better player is going to do more damage, not really the class.
And S tier, we want to be like the really overpowered stuff that you'd be surprised to see groups not running these specs. A is, you know, great specs. Never be surprised to see one in a group. Then B is just kind of bread and butter staple specs that are also just, you know, good choices. C is where we'd start to be surprised to see these specs. Multiple people doing well in them besides just the people that are really specialized and love them. And then D is the ones where we think they're least likely to have a lot of representatives in those kind of high end.
I like a small difference. So if I was to make a tier list, S would be this class is in every single group. A would be this is in most groups, but it's not necessarily required. B means it's possible, but only like if you're good at like really good at the class. And then like C and D is like not ever in high keys. And probably I would only have 4 tiers. Oh, the doorbell? I didn't order food, so I'm not worried about it. Yo, Paps, thanks for the 11-month resubs.
You know, in the encrypted hero range at the end of the season.
One thing we would like to consider is that it's very hard to predict the very end of the season.
Mhm.
Like there were a lot of tier lists that I've done in the past where some specs just look really good, but as you get later into the patch where people start getting fully geared, we start doing crazy high keys, and this is going to be especially true for this patch because we're gaining so much DPS power that we're likely going to be doing in the low 30s, maybe even like 32 keys. So
if Dorky's still here, do you still believe this, by the way, with how high they scaled? I mean, it seems probably true because people are already doing like 27s, 28s, but like, man, those 30s that we were doing, like, jeez, I don't know how you're going to be able to tank some of those mobs. Like in like a 32, are people really going to be doing 32s? Like maybe in some dungeons, I guess. I guess it sort of depends on the affixes and stuff too. I guess it's different because you probably as a tank, you just get threat and run away. But man, I feel like they scaled it a lot more than any of us expected.
When we start getting to that point, we have to consider how well a class survives. That's not just a tank.
So that's like is that like a like Hunter in BFA season 4 where it looked really good at the start of the season and then you realize
Yeah,
it's
I
just
mean,
like
well, to be fair, BM Hunter was still very strong towards the end
Mhm.
of, but we can get to that later.
true, yeah. Let's get started with tanks, right?
Okay.
Yes. And so first off, we have the Brewmaster Monk. So I'll start this off. Brewmaster Monk gets an insane 4-set. Overall, they're doing an incredible amount of damage. I've seen them break 10k DPS on the PTR keys with the new seasonal affix encrypted. Like a lot of the utility.
This is such a funny format because Tettles and Dratnos have to host, so they like go first and they have to like say where the class goes, and then every time that they give their opinion, Dorky chimes in with like, no, you're dumb, or like, nope, you're right. Like Dorky is like the mediator of like what Tettles and Dratnos think. Like normally you would think the way it would work would be Dorky is the one that places it, and then Tettles and Dratnos just kind of like agree, or like, you know, that you let Dorky throw the softball and go first, but every single time they like they have to go first, and then Dorky says
That the
after.
Brewmaster Monk brings
Yo,
has
Chicken,
always been
thanks for the
very good
1113
Mythic
sub.
Plus. This is absolutely the case for encrypted. I had them ranked in the S tier. Do you guys agree? Disagree?
Oh,
I
S
would put them
tier.
in A personally because I think they're a tier below the tank I would put in S. I don't know what you think,
Okay.
Dorky.
To me, I think Brewmaster is also S tier. I really don't think it's too far off from being the best. Like it'd sort of be picking between the two, and everyone already knows which one is the other one.
Okay, all right. Well,
Which we
let's
can get to
let's
next.
toss it an S then, and
Yeah, like
let's talk about the other one.
We'll talk
the
about the
thing
other
with
one.
Brewmaster is, yeah. So the big thing with Brewmaster is, I feel like next patch, Holy Paladin is going to be declining a little bit, and in
Mhm.
Shadowlands, disease dispels are really important. So
Notice Dorky said a little bit. He didn't say that they're gonna fall off completely. He said a little bit, and I think that's very true. In that, I sort of thought HPAL was not gonna exist, like only if they really needed to. But I don't know. The more I play my HPAL, the more I'm starting to think that like maybe it will just be another HPAL season. Also, let's pull up. We can look at this too while we're looking. So this is the current tank rankings. So again, it's gonna be like a little bit skewed because it's early in the season, but so tanks look kind of balanced, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4 brews in the top 20. Seems reasonable.
generally, if your DPS is not going to be bringing it, which I don't think it'll be very popular of a pick, you'll want your tank to be having at least the disease dispel, right? So even though there are some tanks that are pretty good, I do think Brewmaster is not only really OP, but it also has a disease dispel.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. And so, what about the other tank that has a disease dispel, and the other tank that we probably all unanimously have an S tier, Protection
Yeah,
Paladin?
this class.
Before Dorky talks, okay, see, this is why I don't really agree with this. The way that they organize the tier is S means every single, like, S tier means that every single team has one. So to put 2 tanks in the S tier doesn't really make sense, right? Like, in my opinion, Brew and Prop Pally should be A tier just based off of, like, well, both of these tanks are viable, but not one of them is required. I know, like, you might say, oh, they're so OP right now or whatever, but, like, the way I see S tier means, like, this is a mandatory class that you cannot take any other class to replace this.
Is easily the best tank. Like if there's any S class, is this one. It does the most damage. It's consistently the most tanky, and Paladin utility is super underrated in Shadowlands. It's kind of crazy how many times where we go into a high key, and we're thinking, oh man, we don't have a holy Paladin. Well, what are we gonna do? We don't have freedom for this spot. We don't have Bob for this specific mechanic.
Bop for the bleeds and second boss aspires, like freedom for the last boss of Wake. Like, there's actually so many times I'm just like, damn, I hate not being a paladin here.
There are like so many different things that paladins bring, and Prop Paladin specifically is not only a tank, but it's also a DPS and it's also a healer because it's able to heal your entire group.
So why is it so tanky, Dratnus? It's something to do with like Avenger Shield, right?
Yeah, they're playing first Avenger and then their Divine Toll every which cooldown is quite short now with all the upgrades over the course of the expansion. It's tossing out like 30 Avenger shields, and each of those is giving you a shield on yourself. So when you press that button, you just lay on hands yourself, and then when you press your just regular Avenger shield, you also give yourself a big heal that also interrupts, that also makes a bunch of threats. So this is one of those tanks that it just like incidentally prevents a lot of damage by silencing casts that don't normally get kicked. And yeah, I mean, it also just has a large amount of self healing that works well in that kind of Mythic Plus environment. it can be a little bit harder to always have enough sustain in raid, right? The raid build is a little bit different, but
Yeah.
the Kyrian build that works in M plus so well, yeah. I mean, I want it to be alone in its S tier even, but I think that I think that when we look at the end of the season, of the top 20 tanks, it's going to be like 80% prop paladins or more.
80% prop
yeah.
paladins. Yeah, that'll probably be true, I think. Especially considering that there's like, I think if you have any other healer that's not paladin, I feel like you want to have a prop paladin tank. That's like I think a bigger factor than they give it credit for is like, if you're playing with a wrestler druid or a shaman, you need to have a prop paladin. Like, if you're playing with holy priest, like you still probably want prop paladin. Like the only healer that does really well without a prop paladin is a holy paladin.
Yeah, I definitely think Brewmaster
I
is
think
strong
that's
too.
pushing it a little bit too much. I don't think it'll be necessarily 80%.
Yep, I think
But I
Dorky's
also
right
wouldn't
here.
be surprised if the class gets nerfed because it's
Ooh,
definitely
Yeah.
Dorky's calling for
Yeah,
a
if it gets
nerf.
nerfed, then
yeah.
of
Okay,
course
but I
all
mean,
bets are
even if
off.
it didn't get nerfed, I still feel like it wouldn't be that big of a majority. Like I don't think it would be like season 1 of this expansion or BFA, where it's like predominantly one class or one spec.
Yeah,
I do feel
that
like
makes sense.
Brewmaster and various other tanks can be holding that spot. Like even right now, it's sort of like that. But also another thing with the prop paladins is that they're one of the only tanks that have really consistent tankiness. I don't know if you guys have played one, but right now they can maintain Ardent Defender for the entire time. So you sort of combo everything together. You've got Divine Toll in the start of the pull into like Infinite Ardent Defender, and Consecrate's really strong, and then you have your Holy Shield plus the 4-piece and the 2-piece combined. So you just have crazy amounts of holy power, and you have really high block chance,
Mhm.
and that which also works on magic damage.
Yeah,
So there's
I
one
think
thing
that
that really brings is just like really high consistent tankiness.
I think that makes sense for these two to be our S tiers. Okay, so now Blood Death Knight. Dratnus, where did you have Blood DK?
I have
Keep in
been
mind, this was before
E
Blood DK buffs.
off of
And
like
before
the challenge.
this
I think
was
is
before Blood DK buffs, and this was also before the Jailer weapon sims were out, I believe.
just going to be that you're doing less damage than the other ones, but everything else about Blood Death Knight is actually really strong in this coming PTR build. It's got a fantastic set bonus for M plus. What do you think, Dorky?
It's one of the classes where I feel like it can bring a lot. I mean, not really bring a lot, but it can really. It's the only class that can survive really well on its own. Like when I play Blood DK, I feel safer than playing any other tank. The problem is that doesn't really matter in high keys. A lot of times, every single one of these tanks can survive. It doesn't even matter if you're a Pro Warrior or a Vengeance Demon Hunter
Mm-hmm.
or like a Brewmaster. You can survive as any tank right now, and that's not particularly a strong thing to bring into keys.
It's like what Dorky's saying there is the exact same thing about healers, right? And why that's part of the reason why what class they're playing in a plus 30 doesn't really matter in a plus 15, because like, okay, if you're really good at your tank and you have full BIS mythic raid gear, like you're just gonna be tanky, right? For the most part. Obviously certain tanks have different strengths than others, but like it's the same thing with healers, right? Like if you're a healer main and you have full BIS gear, like you're gonna be able to heal for the most part, like super high keys, and it's not gonna be that, right? Like what separates you is gonna be like either your utility or your damage, and so that's why, like, yeah, that's why you bring these classes in a plus 30. But you know, like when I'm pugging, someone who's like certain classes are a lot easier than other classes, right? Like how many of you guys love inviting a bear in a plus 15? Because like, dude, playing with bear is so easy. Like how it's like impossible to play bear poorly. Like you just press incarn and you press thrash and you press iron for, right? But like you probably played with some really beans vengeance demon hunters that are just like, you know, they just like sit there and face tank mobs with like no personals or whatever, and it's just like, okay. So I mean, like, I don't know, just because the class is good in the 30 or a 15 doesn't mean it's good in, you know, that you want to play within your pug.
Yeah, I would say probably B, maybe a low A,
Yeah,
because it's definitely gaining a lot of power going into the next patch, and it's really not that bad of a tank. But yeah, for now, I would say B probably.
I think the damage is what's holding me back.
Yeah, for sure.
And also why I also have them in B.
Yeah, I think that Blood and Prop Paladin, if I was choosing a tank to like try and carry my way to Keystone Master with in like pug groups, I think those two would be my picks because they're so capable of doing it all by themselves.
Yeah. All right. So next up we have Prot Warrior, which I had in C, but I think
C,
it may be a B
oh.
spec. It is relatively tanky. It's almost like immune to physical damage, but like we just said, a lot of the tanks are incredibly tanky on this patch. Prot Warriors 4-set, from my understanding, isn't exactly great, and so like their damage is going to be normally in a normal season, like Prot Warrior is one of the tanks that does some of the highest DPS, and we've seen that a couple seasons in Shadowlands, and that's why we've seen them do pretty well in season 2 of Shadowlands. But I think that they're going to fall off a little bit. Dorky, do you have them?
Holy shit, I got food.
Where do you have them?
I think all the tanks are pretty close, so I would put him in B2. Like I would be surprised if any tank was anything lower than this, just because tank balance is by far the best of any expansion or patch.
Yeah,
I get behind this.
Do you still agree with this, Dorky? Do you still agree with their statement that tank balance is the best it's been of any expansion or patch now that we've been playing for a month?
Yeah, it's like you said, their damage is still really good too, which is why we see them playing in MDI. It's definitely not a bad tank, but it's also nowhere near as good as the other ones. I mean, not nowhere near as good, but like you would not pick them over the other ones.
Yeah, I think that's why I had them in C's, because I feel like they're just like a notch below Blood DK, but I don't necessarily think that they're like a whole tier worse.
Yeah, when I was making my tier list, I had him like right at the top of C, but I'm happy to have him in B. That seems fine to me.
I think tanks are way too close. That's why.
It's definitely true that like you can make happen on any tank. This expansion, it's been great ever since midway through 9.0. They really fixed that.
Okay, so Vengeance Demon Hunter, where do you have them, Dratness?
I put this in B as well. Off of the strength of I think every tank is quite close. I think Vengeance is going to work quite well for players looking to get Keystone Master, even looking to get Keystone Hero. My trouble with the spec is as you start getting higher than that, if you're looking to get like Encrypted Hero, that's where you're going to start running into this problem where 2 auto attacks that interact with you when you don't have 2 defensives up are gonna kill you. So that's the main problem I have with that spec.
From my perspective as a healer, Vengeance seems like the hardest tank. Maybe that's not right, but there's tons, like, you guys saw Dorky tanking infinite mobs, and like I played with a lot of good Vengeance Demon Hunters who don't die, but like the amount of Vengeances I've played that were dog water, I feel like makes this feel like the hardest tank. I don't play it, so I don't know, but I just feel like I see a lot of mistakes and like random falling over from Demon Hunters.
Is a sort of fragile against physical damage that other tanks don't really have at like high levels, and not enough defensive uptime to cover it.
Okay. Dorky, where do you have them? Yeah.
The way I see it is, it's sort of hard to say because Vengeance is a really underrated spec. I feel like Vengeance and Blood Decay in particular, those two are really underrated. And I do feel like if it's played well, it's easily an A. Sort of the same with Blood Decay, but I also agree that it's probably going to be misplayed a lot and people are not going to really like Vengeance, because I actually asked my Twitch chat just once. I was like, well, how do you guys feel about Vengeance? And nobody wants to play with a Vengeance Demon Hunter. If they see one in Group Finder, they're going to insta-decline that class. Because, I mean, like, who the hell wants to have a class that just jumps around everywhere and then your group has no slows and kicks are going off? And then, your Vengeance doesn't really know how to play the game. So, yeah, I would say B is sort of fair. But personally, I feel like it's a solid A. If it's like
yo, Victorian, thanks for the 9 months.
Especially going into next patch.
Yeah, dude,
it's like really solid.
So good.
It is, yeah, it's good. You get nice high uptime on Feldev, but like, I don't know, if you're starting to do high keys, I feel like you need like you press Feldev and you're in meta and you still want spikes up, you still want Firebrand out. Like it's you're getting battered on that spec.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can definitely survive just fine. It's like I was saying earlier, like any single tank can survive at the moment. And one thing that Vengeance brings really big is their damage and Chaos Brand.
Yeah, Chaos Brand definitely, really like big. If you looked at the meters and you included Chaos Brand, it would be potentially up there with Paladin.
Yeah, I do think it's an underrated spec for sure.
I definitely think it's underrated,
A, but I think B is fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm down to concede a B. I had them ranked in A, but I'm down to concede B. All right. So the last tank we have the Guardian Druid, which from my perspective, I had them ranked in A. They are very tanky. I think the biggest downside to Guardian Druid just generally is that they have low threat on some pulls. Their 4-set does help them out a lot.
Does help, yeah.
It's a lot of their damage, but even still, I have noticed that Guardian Druid has threat problems. They kind of feel like a Halls of Atonement specialist in some cases. I actually think that they're maybe even the best tank for HOA.
Oh, yeah.
Just with how Incarn works. They may even be potentially playing Venthyr in some dungeons, which can give them a little bit more damage.
I feel like Venthyr bears some ass.
It just kind of depends. Like there's like a Fae. There's some people playing Fae. There'll be some people potentially playing Venthyr. I think that Guardian Druid's like a solid A tier tank though.
Yeah, Guardian's in a really weird spot. So going into next patch, the tier set actually fixes a lot of their issues.
Mhm.
Like going into polls, you're not a complete paper tank anymore. You can just pop Arc Skin and you'll be able to get your frashes up instantly. And like you said, Fred is not going to be much of an issue anymore. You can easily be able to pick up a bunch of mobs and do like 30k burst on them. The really big issue with Bear going into next season is they don't gain any tankiness outside of the cooldowns. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but compared to literally every single other tank at the moment, every single tank is gaining something. Prop Hound is really tanky, Brewmaster is really tanky, even Blood DK. And the thing is, what I've noticed when doing PTR keys is you'll be really strong, but I mean, you've always been really strong during Incarn. So like nothing really changes there.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of Incarn, you feel like complete paper compared to any of these other tanks.
Yeah, one thing that's nice that kind of hard to foresee, but I feel like Bear and Holy Priest get paired pretty well. Number one, you have like the Disease Dispel and the Curse Dispel and the Poison Dispel. Number two, Symbol of Hope reducing Barkskin is really good because, like, let's say a bear doesn't have Incarn, you can bark twice in the same pull, potentially even 3 times. So I do feel like that's like, I don't want to say it's like overlooked because it's pretty small, but it is. I've noticed with bear, like being able to give him 2 barks in a pull feels really good.
So I've been running into shields like where you're doing DOS, for example. You'll be really strong in Ardent Wield, sure, that's the same as always. But then you go into the bosses and you're getting smashed. You're going into Hakar Hallway, every single 3-4 mod packs are destroying you. So I do feel like that can be a really big issue once you start getting into the higher keys, where a prop paladin will have no issue surviving.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do think A, just because it's really good in most dungeons and it's easily the best tank in some dungeons, like you've said. Halls of Atonements, for example. It's definitely one of the best tanks.
Yeah, I have them A as well, but I do actually kind of agree with you that honestly it may not be worth putting this even in a different tier than the 4 they're in B or the 3 they're in B because it is definitely
Yeah, I mean, I feel
other
like if
tanks have caught
anything,
up a lot.
I might just like say, screw it, I'd rather play a Bloody Cave than a Bear tank, or even like a Vengeance over Bear tank. So I would maybe even put one of those over a.
Interesting.
One thing that's nice as well
Over bear.
for bears and like lower keys is that it's a little bit easier than like blood DK for the healer to save you on a bear as compared to blood DK.
Oh yeah, I mean, if this was like a Pug tier list, easily S
Yeah.
tank, because I would rather
Yeah, for
my
sure.
tank be a Bear tank, because it's really easy to play and they could just press their buttons and be fine. I would not trust one of them playing like a Brewmaster.
Kind of fair.
All right. So there's our tanks. Let's what do we have next on the docket?
All right, hold on. Let's see.
All right.
So hold on. Let's get the MS Paint going. Yo, pure legit. Thanks for the raid, friend. I appreciate it. We're reacting to Dorky's pre-tier list. Okay, here's what I think. This is what I would say. Dorky can maybe quickly agree or disagree, but this is how I feel. So, I would say right now, I would put Brew, Prop Pally, and Blood DK all in A tier. I think all of them could do like the highest keys or close to the highest keys. I think you'll see more Prop Pally just because of the utility, but... And then I would put all the other tanks right below. I think, yeah, you can maybe make some argument for like putting something in C or something, but like, I genuinely feel like every tank can live if played well, and there's no tank that's like mandatory. So this is probably would be my ranking for high keys. And then for pugs, it's hard to say because it depends on how good you are, but for pugs, I probably like bear more. For pugs, if you're good, Blood DK is like S tier. If you're not good, Blood DK is like B tier. Let's be honest, if you're pugging, you're probably B tier. And then for pugs, I'd probably like do this. I'd probably like move Blood DK up, move Blood DK down, and then move bear up. Vengeance A. I mean, it depends on if you're good. Like, for these two classes, if you're good, you can carry in a pug, right? Like, you can be really, really good in a pug. But if you're not the tank and you're like, who do I invite that's doing a random 15? I'd probably not invite Demon Hunter or Blood DK. That's sort of how I feel.
So there's our tanks. let's. What do we have next on the docket, Tettles?
We got healers. And first off, we have the
Let's be honest, okay? Before we talk about gatekeeping and how I'm getting pugs declined, all you guys know that you do not decline a tank. You're sitting in Group Finder for 10 minutes. None of the tanks are applying to your group, and you're accepting the first tank that applies, no matter what their score is or whatever, what class they play, because you just want to play the game, because you're a Mistweaver, or you're an elemental shaman, or you're a BM hunter, and no one will invite you, and you're just trying to get a freaking key going so that you can get some score to get something out of your weekly vault, okay? You're not declining a tank.
Discipline Priest. So Automatic Jack is watching intently. All of his priest followers are watching to see where we rank them. And I have the Discipline Priest in B tier. I have them in B tier.
Are you kidding me?
B.
I put him in C on mine.
Oh, wow. Put him in the gutter.
I agree with C, man. Put him in the gutter, man.
Yeah, that's.
This is harsh. Put him in the gutter, Dorky says. The first class, Dorky says, put him in the gutter. It's Dispriest.
Right, Tettles. You've been listening to too much propaganda.
Okay,
Forsaken,
so I think
the
that the biggest issue with Disc is like, so while it can do a decent amount of like healing throughput and like keep your group alive, it doesn't really do much else for like a Mythic Plus dungeon outside of that. Their dungeon utility has generally been lacking, and they're not even that high on like the damage spectrum for Mythic Plus. So for a lot of the other healing specs, whenever we talk about them in the context of raid, Discipline...
I don't think Dispriest is that bad, by the way. I think Dispriest is actually pretty criminally underrated. I don't think Holy Priest does that much more damage than Dispriest. Like, it does a little bit more, but barely more, and I don't know. Like, I get it that it's not Holy Priest, but the fact that you have Pain Sup and Barrier, and you can live better... You have Pain Sup, Barrier, and Rapture to live in high keys. Like, yeah, I mean, Disc is the arcane of Priest, exactly, right? Like, Holy's good right now, so not that many people are playing Disc, but yeah, Boon is most of Disc Priest damage, yeah, Boon is most of Priest damage, yeah, exactly. And as a Disc Priest, you can actually use Boon way more than you can as a Holy Priest. Like, as a Holy Priest, your Boon doesn't really heal that much. As a Disc Priest, you can put up atonements and your boon heals for way more. So you actually are a lot more flexible. Like, for instance, I was watching Mode. I was watching some Mode VODs yesterday night, just trying to learn some stuff about Holy Priest. And he goes into the, you know, the Portal Guardian and then the two caster mobs in theater, like in the Koltharok, the Lich Wing. And Mode tries to pop boon and heal through it as a Holy Priest. And his team just, like, dies instantly. And I'm just like, dude, you can't heal with boon as a Holy Priest. Like, yeah, it does a little bit of healing, but it just is like basically a DPS cooldown. So like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Disc is as bad as people make it out to be. Yo, Nardar, thanks for the 10 months.
Higher end of like raid DPS, but for Mythic Plus, they are maybe bottom half of that, while at the same time your group kind of always feels like they're dying.
What?
They always feel like they're low HP, and Disc still has issues like healing the tank.
Yeah, you know, Disc's really valuable.
Tanks are as tanky as they ever have been.
They don't need that healing rotation, but actually in M+, that's kind of less true, because you got to cast more Shadowmens, and that doesn't do damage. I do think it's a fairly awkward spec to try and get value out of an M+. It can be done, but it usually involves like the kind of bending over backwards to make it work that I think justifies a C tier.
Okay, that's fair. All right.
Agreed.
Holy Priest. Dorky, where'd you have Holy Priest?
This one might be a surprise, but I think it's an A tier healer.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
I think it's a surprise, right? Yeah, I was playing with the...
This is an example. Dorky did the same thing in beta with Resto Shaman too. Because for a long, like all of BFA, I told you guys, Resto Shaman was dog shit. And Dorky was like, dude, Resto Shaman's gonna own. And everyone was like, dude, Resto Shaman sucks. Everyone said Resto Shaman is going to be bad. And this was Dorky before the patch saying that Holy Priest is going to be good. Granted, he was only saying this because he was playing with... Well, whatever. We'll let him explain.
The number one healer on China in Raider IL. That guy that plays Resto Shaman. He was trying this, and for some random ass reason, he was just doing the most amount of damage. It's not like Resto Shaman crazy damage, but this class with Kyrian is able to do like anywhere between 8 and 10k overall. So it's a high damage class. It struggles to live, especially once you get into the higher keys. but I feel like it is possible to live, and
Yep.
the healing is actually pretty solid. It's not bad healing at all. It's
That's
like
really
the
good healing.
definitive healer. It just doesn't really have
Yeah.
any DRs or anything to like really keep your team from getting one shot.
Yeah. So one thing that Holy Priest actually struggles with a little bit after playing with it more is burst AoE healing. So like for example, as Disc Priest, you can heal your party at once with like Boon or like pre-rapturing everybody. Holy Paladin, you can sort of like Devo and like bubble and like kind of DR it a little bit. Like Shaman has Cloudburst and a lot of AoE healing like that. Holy Priest really doesn't have good burst AoE healing. Him is like okay, and the problem with him is you have to move, right? Like basically the best thing you can do with Holy Priest to AoE heal is like Sanctify, Serenity, and then pop Apoth, and then Sanctify, Serenity again. But that's like 5 globals, and then after that you're just like heal, 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 right? And it just like I don't know. I think for some mechanics, Holy Priest, and part of that, what's tough about that is that Holy Priest takes so much damage, right? So any of those mechanics that do heavy group damage, like you're at 10% health as Holy Priest after that. If we're talking about like Zav, like the AoE damage, or like any sort of just like whatever AoE damage, Holy Priest is getting hit really, really hard. And like, yeah, I think it's still doable. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but like, yeah, and also keep in mind, like, that's part of what Dorky said at the beginning of the video, saying, like, it's hard to tell how the meta is going to come based, like, at the end of the season, because who knows, right? Like, maybe some combination of, like, you know, playing Harmonious Apparatus, or, like, some talent combo, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, they might figure out how to deal with those sorts of things, but it's just hard to know, right? Like until we get to those challenges and then people face them and then they see, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to know what happens until we are able to face those challenges. Yo, the one Bogaboo, thanks for the Prime sub, friend.
Especially your tank.
So where did you have this one, Dratnos?
I had originally put this in C, but I
C.
I definitely like putting it high.
Dratnos had it in C. This is why I think it's funny that they made Dratnos and Tettles guess first before Dorky told them, because Holy Priest has been C tier ever since I've played the game, but
higher than that, I'd be fine with A or B.
I had them in B. Okay, so I can actually explain why they're doing so much damage, by the way, Dorky. So a lot of it is the fact that they're able to keep the group alive so easily with their 4-set and double legendary that they're able to commit a lot more globals to doing damage. It's not that Holy Priest really ever did bad damage, but with that, plus the fact that they're able to play Kyrian, or they can even potentially play Fae and Mythic Plus if they want Fae Guardians, they are able to do pretty surprisingly high amount of damage.
Did Tettles give a reason? Type 1 if you think Tettles knows what he's talking about, or type 2 if he's just a boomkin. We'll listen to it one more time. Let's hear Tettles' explanation.
And double legendary, able to keep the group alive so easily with their 4-set and double legendary that they're able to commit a lot more globals to doing damage. It's not that Holy Priest really ever did bad damage, but with that, plus the fact that they're able to play Kyrian, or they can even potentially play Fae and Mythic Plus if they want Fae Guardians, they are able to do pretty surprisingly high amount of damage. I don't know if they're A or B personally, because it's like one of those things.
Didn't you just put him in C? All right, like I'm not gonna flame Tettles. Like if he asked me to, like we've all seen me rank DPS specs, so I'm not gonna flame him too hard. He's not supposed to know how good Holy Priest is compared to Disc Priest. I'm not gonna tell him how Boomkin is compared to Warlock, but
things that you haven't seen enough of them to really make the greatest guess on where they're going to be. But I definitely think that they're a lot better than they have been in previous seasons.
True.
Yeah, the other thing too is
down to concede an A.
I feel like they're just. I think they're just better than other healers at the moment. The other healers are honestly not as good, aside from that one healer, which we
yeah. The question is like, should they be 1 or 2 tiers below that one healer?
That is a fair point.
That one healer is like 3 tiers higher than everything else.
Quite good.
Can we make it like an S++ or something?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I vibe with wherever you want to put this one. Let's talk about that one healer.
Okay, we'll go Resto Shaman next since we've just been alluding to it. This shit's S. It's not close. Kyrian Restoration Shaman, it's doing stupid amounts of damage, like 8 to 10k DPS. It was already super high overall damage with Vesper Totem in 9.1.
This was before the Conduit nerf, which doesn't affect overall that much, but keep in mind, well, so there's two things that I think is important here. Number one, it's before the conduit nerf, so it's a little bit less single target, which doesn't affect overall, but it does affect single target damage, which is important. And number two, also, I think a lot of people didn't foresee the desausage trinket, which is just like a bunch of damage for every healer. So like even healers that don't do that much damage can use it.
In 9.2, they're able to play double damage legendary, which is not true for a lot of other healers, and that's actually a really big deal for Restoration Shaman. Plus, they don't lose much throughput to be able to do that. Plus, Vesper Totem getting slight buffs coming into the patch, kind of questionably.
There were some were reverted, right? There was the
conduit thing got reverted.
Oh, okay, okay, that was after the conduit nerf then.
I think a Vesper Totem buff came through, right?
I don't know. I think one might
so.
have for Ellie an enhancement, but I don't think one did for Resto.
Anyways, highest DPS healer by like a lot, probably the best throughput healer. So whenever we talked about them in the context of raid, we called them like the jack of all trades, master of none healer. That's true for Mythic Plus, but that works to their benefit in Mythic Plus because that means that they're losing nothing, while at the same time they're pumping out absolute top tier DPS. And they have Shaman utility, which is, you could argue that either Shaman or Druid has the best utility, but Shaman utility with like Wind Shear, Rock Elemental, Stun, Slow, very good.
Yeah, and especially the whole thing when you're talking about how they don't really need to worry about healing while doing damage. It's especially going to be true once they start playing Chains of Devastation with their 4-piece. So they can just like spam their...
This is something I'm really interested in. I really want to hear, because Dorky's right on almost all things, and I haven't gotten the 4-piece tier set. I'm really interested to try 4-piece tier with chains. He was saying that some shamans on PTR were running that, and it was really good. I crafted it just to have it, because I just made both the Legos anyway. The Earthalia one too. I don't have any tier set though, so I can't try it. If what he says is true though, and that's really strong, that's going to be a really fun build. Because honestly, Earthalia is like kind of annoying to play, so if you could play Chains of Dev is really, really fun. So if that ends up being a viable build that's like usable on like trash and bosses, and if you're using Chain Lightning and Chain Heal on bosses normally, and then you just like get the buff from having Chains of Dev, that's gonna feel really, really good. So I can't wait to get the 4 set to try that.
Chain Lightnings and Chain Heals.
Okay, we got everybody's favorite healer, Holy Paladin.
Let's see what
Dorky, where
I'm interested to hear what Dorky says. What do you guys think? Does Dorky put it in the A tier with Holy Priest, or does he put it down? I think Dorky's gonna put it A. Even though I think everyone is saying B tier right now, I think Dorky's gonna put it A tier.
Where do you think that this lands now after an absolute massive stomp on Ashidala?
Dude, I tried playing with Holy Paladins, and it does not feel good. You don't feel very safe. They don't really heal a whole lot. They're struggling with mana too, so it's very hard to chain pull with them. You're just constantly asking for drinks, and it's a complete waste of time on your keys. Like, who the hell wants your healer to drink? Are you kidding me? When Val tells me he needs a drink, I just go. I do feel like Paladin utility, though, is way too good. Like, I mentioned this before. And once we start getting to that point where we might face one-shots, I do think they could be good. For now, I'm going to put him in the B.
Oh, okay. He put him in B.
There's a possibility it becomes a high A, possibly even S tier, if it turns out that we need a Paladin at the end, right? Like, it doesn't matter how much healing, it doesn't matter how much damage your healer has. It could be that situation where we heavily want a Holy Paladin. So, however you guys want to say, you know, like maybe it's a B, maybe it's an A.
Where did you have it right now?
Potentially S at the end.
I put it B as well. I do understand where you're coming from, though.
Yo, Thunder, thanks for the prime sub, friend.
With a solid chance of actually being the healer that does the 33 or whatever. But yeah, I do think it's like, I mean, it is rough out there for a Holy Paladin right now, right? Like it is just doing like the homework keys is a challenge on that spec, right?
Okay, that's going a little bit too far.
I had him at A because I didn't think that they fell that far, but I do. Their throughput healing is anemic.
Yeah, honestly, A is fine too.
Fine by me.
Yeah, you know, honestly, just give him a low A. Screw it.
All right. Well,
Dorky changes the answer to give him A. All right. The A's win. I thought Dorky put it in B, but he was convinced.
We'll go with low A.
Fine.
All right, Mistweaver Monk. So whenever we were chanting "put him in the gutter" earlier,
All right, let's hear what
Mistweaver Monk.
Where do you guys think Dorky puts Mistweaver Monk? If Dorky said put him in the gutter for Disc Priest, the thing about Dorky though is he's a man of the people. So I don't think Dorky would put Mistweaver in the D tier.
Could
put
also
him in
go in the
too,
gutter.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I had Mistweaver in C as well.
Their utility and throughput healing are good. Their damage is catastrophically bad for Mythic Plus.
Yeah, their throughput was going to be quite good with before the big nerf that came through to the Venthyr build.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I just struggle to see a strength that this spec is going to have besides applying Mystic Touch to things, which is
I mean, even
nice.
with the throughput though, even with that throughput, it wouldn't have helped because that's generally not the limiting factor for healers. They're basically holy priests that don't do damage. That is also
Right,
about melee.
The main problem with this spec, right, is you can create yourself like 5 globals to do some damage in, and then you just don't have any buttons you can press that actually do any sizable amount of damage with those globals, which is really unfortunate.
So in the gutter they go,
easily.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
In the gutter.
Easily the spec that needs the most work.
Okay, Resto Druid. I think that this one, oh man. Okay,
let's
so
see
at the start
this.
of the PTR cycle, they were probably
I believe this was before the Kyrian Lego nerf. I might be wrong. Maybe this is after the Kyrian Lego nerf. They'll talk about it. But if they place this really high and don't mention it, then this is pre-Kyrian Lego nerf. Because Resto Druid was looking really good.
S tier with Resto Shaman, but after the Kyrian nerfs.
Okay.
Dorky, where do you think this goes?
In the gutter?
I've been playing a lot of Resto Druid myself.
Shut up. I've been playing a lot of Resto Druid myself, he says. Dude.
Okay.
I really do like it a lot. It heals for a crap ton, and it just feels very safe. You have infinite mana.
I've been playing Resto Druid. It's really, really good. Everyone's safe. It heals infinite. It does infinite damage. Yeah, we get it. You're a Giga Chad Resto Druid player. We get it.
I feel like it is capable of doing damage, but the issue is you have a hard time doing damage when you have to heal. Like, if you didn't have to heal at all, sure, that'd be easily an A or S, but
Okay.
I'd probably put it in the B.
Okay, I like that.
I think B is probably fine. Maybe like a low A.
Wow,
But
low
yeah,
A.
Yeah, I have
Wow.
this B as well.
I had it in A, but at the same time, like, one of the big things is like it can play double damage legendary, but at the same time, like Dorky said, if you have to like commit globals to healing, you're not doing much damage anyways.
Yeah, your damage tanks really hard the moment you have to like leave cat form and start healing.
I think it's maybe a little bit worse than these two healers now that I'm really looking at it.
I do feel like if you were pugging though, if you're pugging or if you're just like a random healer, I feel like Resto Druid is easily one of the best healers.
I agree.
I would love to have Resto Druid in my group. I would love to play Resto Druid myself if I was pugging.
I agree.
But it's just not a very
Except for you don't get invited. That's the main problem with playing Resto Druid when you're pugging is you're not pugging, you're just sitting in Orbos.
good spec once you start getting into the higher keys. Man,
Yeah, it's
JB's
fair.
gonna hate me.
That's how he is. All right, we're gonna move on
All right.
to deep.
Man,
Yeah, it's
JB's
fair.
gonna hate me.
We'll do the postmortem. And again, I'm not trying to say like I know better because this is from a month ago. This is the tier list that they made from a month ago before any of the M plus stuff came out. So I'm just more trying to like say this is what I think now that the dust has settled. So let's look at sorry for the half flashbang. So here's what we got right here. So first of all, I would say I don't know if I think Resto Shaman is S tier. Resto Shaman's certainly good and it certainly does good damage, but I think the biggest problem with mainly what Resto Shaman brings in pugs is the kick and the lust, but in organized groups that doesn't matter so much. Maybe you might need the lust, but you probably won't. So its main appeal for high-end keys, it's damage, but I think Holy Priest is doing a lot. I think these two healers are doing a lot more damage than people expected. Also, I think people are starting to realize that damage isn't really as important as they thought. I think right now healer damage is the least important it's been ever since like people got good at Mythic Plus. And I think that it's just going to be about living the highest keys, which Resto Shaman's still okay at. It's still a great group healer, but I think I'm putting it in A tier. And I think I agree with HPAL being in A tier as well. I think all three of these healers will see play in the highest keys. So let's talk about the benefits of each. Resto Shaman, great for pugs, has a kick and bloodlust. It's really good at burst AoE healing. By far, it's the best AoE healer of the three. very mana efficient, very strong. Holy Paladin is the most durable in terms of its plate armor. You have Devo Aura, and then you have Aura Mastery for your group. You have Bubble, you have Sack. For really hard, like, just hard-hitting abilities and bosses, Holy Paladin's really good. Also, I think Holy Paladin's damage is a little bit underrated compared to what most people think. I think once people like Elismir, who are really good at Holy Paladin and have really good gear, get out on the streets, look, I'm going to eat my shoe. If Elismir comes out and starts pushing keys as a Holy Priest or a Resto Shaman, I will eat my shoe live on stream. Elismir is going to come out at the end of the season. He's going to play Holy Paladin. He's going to do infinite damage. Everyone's going to realize that Holy Paladin is still good, okay? It's solid. Okay, Holy Priest, I think Dorky knew the power of Holy Priest, and I think he wanted to rate it higher, but it's like, it was so taboo then, at the time of this video, to rate Holy Priest higher than, like, with the level of Resto Shaman. Holy Priest is really good. Another thing that I really like about Holy Priest is that it gives PI to DPS that do absurd amounts of damage, right? Being able to PI a Survival Hunter or a Destro Lock is so powerful. Like, I think Holy Priest is actually the highest damage healer if you factor in the PI. It's absurd. It struggles a little bit with single target because it depends on if you can get the buff. If you get with the boon, it's actually pretty good single target, and PI if you have a good PI single target, but it's not always good on single target because a lot of your damage does come from boon compared to like Resto Shaman, which, you know, with Earthquake, Earth Ellie on boss, and Vesper Totem and the Conduit on the boss does a lot of single target. Pally does a lot of single target. In the B tier, I think Disc Priest is underrated. I think Disc Priest could be in the highest keys. Again, it's sort of the problem of, well, Holy Priest is better, so everyone's just going to be playing Holy instead of Disc. But I think Disc is actually pretty dang good. I think Disc has a lot of the same stuff that Holy does, and where it struggles with it doesn't have be able to push health bars up. It has some of the power that Holy Paladins have, and it has Barrier, it has Pain Sup, it has Rapture, and Rapture with the buff, like being able to Rapture super, super often, I think is going to be crazy powerful. Like, Disc Priest has a lot of cooldowns, and being able to CDR, like, Disc Priest with Boon is going to do crazy amounts of damage too, and Boon is more flexible. Druid, I think Druid is good. I think Druid could exist in high keys. I think people like Nania and people like J.B, who play Druid, are going to exist in high keys and play Druid. I think it's not going to be a go-to for someone who's not a Druid specialist, sort of like in the same way that Disc Priest isn't a go-to unless... I mean, even Mode is playing Holy Priest, which I guess maybe leaves more credence to playing Disc Priest. But I do think Druid is playable. The problem with Druid, the thing that Druid doesn't have that Holy Paladin and Disc Priest does have, although Druid is durable with the Bear Form and the Conduits, Druid can't really protect its team. Like, it has Ironbark, I guess, but it doesn't have Barrier, it doesn't have Devo, it doesn't have SLT. So, like, if your whole team can live, you can also live. Like, Druid itself is really, really tanky with all the defensive bear conduits and being able to bear form whenever you want with bark skin on a really, really short CD. Druid is really tanky in itself. It can't really help its team, though. And if you have to play with, like, let's say the meta ends up being like Survival Hunter or like some class that's not tanky, it's gonna struggle a little bit playing as a Druid. Mistweaver, it's not that bad, you know. I hate it, but the problem with Mistweaver is just that why play Mistweaver? Like, what does Mistweaver bring? Out of looking, like, we talked a little bit about what all these healers bring. What does when are you like, oh, I'm really happy I have a Mistweaver here, you know? Like, there's just not a lot of reason to bring a Mistweaver. It's not that it can't heal. It's not that its damage is so low. Like, its damage is still okay. But, like, there's just no reason to bring it, you know? There's just no reason to bring it. Disease Dispel? Yeah, I mean, I guess if you need a Disease Dispel and all of your Holy Priest, Disc Priest, and Holy Paladin friends are offline, you can invite a Mistweaver. But, like, I don't know. it just, yeah, Mistweaver does have utility, but it just doesn't have anything where it's like, you know, the problem with Mistweaver is all of its damage globals feel so bad. Like, you really need to buff Mistweaver's damage. Like, in my opinion, if Mistweaver was the highest damage healer, I think it would balance things out, right? Because, like, if it did more damage than Resto Shaman, well, Resto Shaman has better burst AoE, like, it has better utility. It would sort of put it, like, Mistweaver literally needs to be the highest damage healer. Like, you need, like, if you have a Mistweaver, you should be like, oh, this cranks. But I don't know, you know. So I think this is my ranking right now, and we may see, like, for instance, we may see Holy Priest and Shaman move up and Paladin sort of go down. We also might see Paladin move up, right, as people just decide that you need to run it to live high keys. But this is my this is probably my DPS ranking or my healer ranking.
It's how yes. All right, we're gonna move on to DPS. So first up, we have Demonology Warlock.
All right, DPS. I'm just AFK.
I had it in C, but I'm also down to concede a D for Demo Warlock. They don't do much AoE.
No.
I put him in B. I think the spec's
really?
not bad.
You guys think it's way better than I think
I
it
put
is.
it in A, man. I actually think it's a really good spec.
We're ranking this for raid?
No, like
No. It's actually good. So,
nice.
It does okay AoE, not like crazy.
Yeah,
it's like pretty solid AoE, and it does really good single target from what I've seen so far. Like amongst the best single target.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just feel like there's not a lot of really good specs at the moment. So relatively, I think it's really strong.
When you're playing a spec as well, that's like a good single target spec on a pretty short cooldown as well. That's really nice part about it too, right? Is you're not like beholden to a 7-minute cooldown or a 3-minute cooldown or something on demo, right? You can go like every minute and a half, which it makes the spec quite flexible, and it means that your overall actually tends to be quite good. If like you can get most of your cooldowns in a dungeon, you're not having to sit on it.
I run into the issue of like the fact that they are such a single target specialist. All right, I'm just gonna say
they're capable of doing AoE too. That's the thing. They're not just a single target.
Yeah.
Well, so the other thing that I don't know if maybe they'll talk about it, but keep in mind, you can change spec, you can change covenant, you can change legendary from dungeon to dungeon, from week to week, right? Destro Warlock is good too. You can play demo in some dungeons, right? You can play demo in some dungeons, you can play demo in some weeks, you can play Destro in some dungeons, right? So it's kind of hard to qualify that, but like Warlock in general, I think stonks are rising. I think Warlock is like pretty dang strong right now. And the like, yeah, you don't have to play demo in every key and every week, right? But like the fact that it is like, here's the thing that I think Dorky understands that 99% of people don't understand about Mythic Plus is that single target damage is actually crazy valuable. Single target damage in keys is okay. You can't play Affliction. Okay, when I said every spec, you can't play. It's okay. It's like saying you can play a lot of specs as a druid. Like druids can play a lot of spec. You can't play feral. You know, we get it. But single target damage is actually so important, and like that's why sub rogues are so good. You see sub rogue being brought to every single key, every single MDI, and people are like, "Oh, it's because of Shroud. People need to bring Rogue because of Shroud." It's just like, no, dude. Rogue blasts on single target, and it has a bunch of good utility aside from Shroud, right? Like, I think Warlock is, I don't know. We'll let him explain more because I actually don't know anything about Warlocks, but
Implosion, cast it.
All right,
they do really good AoE actually.
You just want to split the difference between all three of us and just slam it in B?
I mean, I had it in B originally,
that's
so I'm
not
fine with
doing
that.
it justice.
Wow. So Tettles says, let's just compromise and put it in B, and Dorky says that ain't good enough. We got to put it in the A tier.
Oh.
Dorky and I have a
Let's
little
put
bit of
in
disagreement.
low A. How about that? We'll put in low A.
All right.
Let's compromise and
I
put
think
it
you're
exactly
heavily underestimating.
where I had it at the start.
All right. Well, I think it's a lot worse than that, but all right, I'm down with low A.
I put it in B because I do think it's not a very popular spec. No one plays that crap. Who the hell plays Demo? I've never seen a player in my life.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I feel like B is justified for this because like I think it will be good in the keys that it's in, but I don't think people are gonna seek it out for keys.
Yeah,
that's probably
that
true.
I can agree with.
All right.
Okay.
Affliction.
Put it in the gutter.
It's bad damage. It's awful damage. Their 4 sets like a 2% damage gain or some shit. It's.
Is it really? I don't know. They're in 9.1. They do quite good damage in M+, right?
Yeah.
What?
So even if they're not gaining much this patch,
don't-
are they really going to be that bad at
So
like
they
an
don't-
M+ damage profile?
I bet the next words Dorky says are "put him in the gutter." He just says it again.
They don't gain much from a second legendary, right?
Right,
Because
yeah,
they're already
that's
playing
true.
Satchel, and then their 4-piece is maybe the worst in all of all specs.
I don't know. I mean, they were doing so much damage in like AoE pulls though.
This is true. But they were unable to do single target. Okay, so they're going to do the
That's
exact
true.
same amount of single target damage as
That's
they
true.
did this patch.
Right now, Dorky, this is like, you know, when a parent just like lets the kids argue, and you just have like, I just imagine like a parent just watching over his two little kids just like arguing, just like shaking his head, just like, you know, someday they'll learn.
Next patch.
Yeah, no, yeah, it is
All right.
definitely a bad class. I don't think it belongs any higher than that. Also, it suffers from that issue where it's a class that has triple DPS specs, and you're just much better off playing any of the other Warlock specs.
That's true.
always.
Yeah, I guess Destro
Which
or
I
Demo
don't know,
is like
yeah.
they
Yeah,
dominate
I
it.
don't know if
Yeah,
that would factor this, but
I think
I
it's
would.
fair to mention it. Yeah. Okay. What about
let's
the
talk about
Destro
them.
then?
I really also want to put Destro in A just because
Wow, 5 head, dude. Let's see what they say.
they do have the best uncapped AoE in the game at the moment. There's no class that compares with them in uncapped AoE. So anytime
I
there's
had them
like
in A.
Oh, Tettle's
So
put it in
I
A?
actually-
Would be, but I'm fine with A for Destro. Yeah.
yeah, there's single
Let's look at Tettle's face. Do you think Tettle's put it in A? Let's look at Tettle's face. Did Tettle's put it in A here?
no class that compares with them in uncapped AoE. So
I
anytime there's
had them
like
in A.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
the
I
only
put them
issue
in
is
B, but I'm fine with A for Destro. Yeah.
yeah, their single target sucks. That's like they're very complete
Yeah.
opposite of Demo. Their single target is very lackluster, but their AoE is insane. Also, another thing that I really like about Warlocks or Destrolocks specifically is they play Ventfear and they spread curses. The curse spreading is so good, especially for tanks. Yeah, I'm fine with it in A. I wouldn't be
I'm
surprised
down
if these
for A.
get played as one of the meta classes.
Yeah, because there's such heavy trash specialists in the fact that you're able to have like 100% uptime on Infernal and AoE, and they just do so much. I mean, they're going to top, like if you bring one of these, I feel like they're going to top overall, maybe
They're a
TM.
trash specialist.
They're going to top overall in your group, and it's like they're going to be able to carry you pretty heavily on trash. I think that like warrants them to be an A. I don't think it's going to be popular though. I don't think that Warlock like generally is going to be super popular in Mythic
Warlock has
Plus.
definitely fallen off in popularity.
Yeah, but I do think they're good.
I'm fine with A for this. Yeah. I mean, I think popularity is like it's worth mentioning, but I don't think we should.
No.
Talking about DPS specs though for a second, let's look at some other specs that we see all the time. So Sub-Rogue is like completely a single target specialist. It's definitely okay in AoE, but like compared to classes like Destro, it's like a joke. And then also Frost Mage. Frost Mage is another really good single target class, and Frost Mage is like the hero of World of Warcraft. So the fact that I think Dorky is sort of envisioning like the whole Mythic Plus meta, seeing that he knows every team is going to have a rogue, right? He knows that every team is probably going to have a mage. So it's like like your third class sort of is an AoE blaster, right? Like think about, sorry, I have the hiccups. Think about last season. Last season was Windwalker, right? Windwalker was the AoE blaster. It did dog water single target damage, but it was an AoE blaster. And I think Dorky's kind of thinking like, well, yeah, Destro has like terrible single target, but like that's what it's there for. Like it's literally there to be the AoE blaster. And then on top of that, he's realizing like, well, maybe on Tyrant weeks you just play demo anyway, and then you just have like then maybe your Frost Mage has like a little bit of AoE, and then you just have insane single target on Tyrant weeks.
I agree.
Like we should be
Yeah,
like, how
if-
popular should it be, not how popular will it be?
That's fair because I do feel like if we're including popularity in this, it'd be the same as Demo, where it's like a really good spec, heavily underrated,
Okay.
but nobody will really play them.
Yeah, like this is the rating it. So if we put it in B, we're underrating it too.
Okay. So Dratnus, where did you have the Arcane Magician?
I put this in B as well. I think that of the mage specs, this one has a solid chance of being what the mage
No,
that
it's
gets
the
played.
worst.
No, me and Dorky both just blurt out no when he says Arcane is gonna be the best.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's the worst, but yeah, B is fine.
Fair enough. Like I put all the mages specs fairly close to each other this time around. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about Frost after the nerfs it got. What do you think, Dorky? Is that still going to be the one you're
So-
expecting?
People are saying that Frost Mage is going to be bad all of the people, especially the mages out there, they're telling us how this class is completely dead. They need buffs, but I don't agree at all. I think this class is still broken as hell.
Yep.
I think
I
it's
would put
still
it
S
in
tier.
a
I think
high, I would
Frost
put it in
is
a very
still
high A. Like I would
Very
not put
high
it in
A
S
tier, yep.
specifically. Yeah, the only reason I wouldn't put it in S is because
Wakadu's not happy. Maybe we need to make a tier list of how good classes are at gaslighting the community. What do you guys think the tier list would be? I think S tier would be like Moonkins and probably Holy Paladins. A tier would be like mages probably. And then classes that are really bad at gaslighting the community are like feral druids. All they do is like sit there and cry. Like ret paladins, they just sit there and cry. Like, I think demon hunters have been good for so long, but they're slowly going to get better at gaslighting everybody. But yeah, well, that would be an interesting tier list.
I do feel like there are situations where you might not want a frost mage. I think they're the best in some dungeons and arguably one of the best in a lot of the other dungeons.
I mean,
So
they have
that's a guy.
they have
Okay,
some
yeah,
the
go.
highest AoE in the game, and they have like the best, maybe the second best priority damage of all of the specs in the game. And I feel like to me that warrants them being S because like you're able to get so much value out of them. Plus, if you're playing with a prop paladin, you don't have like a great slow. I mean, you have like an okay slow. Brewmaster Monks, I would say, arguably has a little bit better.
See, read the chat. Read the chat from the last. You see that this proves why Moonkins are S tier at gaslighting. 95% of the chat is participating in the comment that I made and talking about which classes are good at gaslighting the community. What do all the Moonkins do? Nope, Moonkin sucks. Moonkin sucks. They don't even try and participate at all. Immediately defensive mode, immediately convince the community, sell their point, right? They immediately, like, read the chat from the last, rewind 1 minute and read the chat. Everyone just like, oh, this class is good at gaslighting, this class is. All the Moonkin sucks. That's like, if that isn't proof of what I said, there you go.
Of a slow, better of a time wrangling mobs. But I think if you're playing with like a prop paladin, you probably want a frost mage, right?
I think that there will be a lot of
It's
groups
A.
that don't run one. Yeah, I mean, I originally had this in B, but I definitely would prefer A to S.
No. B is a copium. It's definitely
B
a
is
very high A.
copium.
B is
Fair
copium.
enough.
I'm down.
As high of an A as possible.
All right, I'm
Okay.
down to put him in A.
I'm
All
only
right.
saying this for the mages out there because every mage is gonna complain. They'll
So
say
true.
it's like C tier, D tier, but it's
C
usually like
tier.
pretty close to an S.
Okay. So we got fire up next. Where did you have fire, Dratnos?
I put fire in C.
Ooh.
I don't know about you guys, but I
Keep
don't
in mind, Fire got buffed recently. I think Fire may have been buffed twice since the making of this video, so.
think fire's going to be all that popular
That's a
choice.
mage copium too.
Okay.
It's definitely. If arcade is B, I think fire is way better than arcade.
Okay. So do
I
you
think
want it
it's-
in B as well, or are you trying to put it higher than that?
I think it's also a low A.
If
If you're not gonna play Frost,
How
you
mad
can
is
play Fire.
Wakadu right
That's how
now?
I see it.
I also had them low A, but I don't want to bully Dratnos. Just completely hijack the tier list. So the thing with
No,
fire
man,
is like
don't let the mages compromise.
so the
Mages
deal with
don't need to
fire is
compromise.
like
I feel like Tettles has settled on his strategy for the video now. Sometimes I do this in these GG recordings where it takes me like halfway through the recording to settle on his strategy. So now Tettles has figured out that he just needs to not say anything and wait for Dorky and then just agree with Dorky. So while we'll make fun of Tettles, this was a pretty 5-head play.
it's overall damage. So like while it's not going to be great for raid because it's like throughput is not particularly strong for Mythic Plus, the ability to just have combust for every single pack and do reasonably good damage, I think puts them in A for me. Maybe they would be a B tier spec because their utility at least is lacking. And if okay, so if we're gonna really have to separate these out, it should probably be Frost and A just because their utility is a lot better. Fire, I think I'm down to put them in B now that I'm really talking myself out of it.
You just put arcane in C, honestly.
I don't know. My
Dorky doesn't give a fuck about mage. He's just like, fine, just put it in C. It doesn't matter, it's arcane mage.
Between fire and arcane is that I do think arcane has some unique strengths in terms of how it does damage, but
That's
I
true.
don't really see fire as having strengths over playing frost in a lot of dungeons.
I
The
agree
thing about
with
arcane
that.
as well is like I don't know, Kyrian Arcane with double Lego, like that is a potent combo. Fire's not really getting anywhere near as exciting
Their damage is
a double
bad.
Lego build or anything like that. Yeah, their set bonus is anemic. I don't know.
I've tried talking with other mages too, but they also feel like fire might be better in some dungeons. Like say you're playing
Okay.
Theater of Pain or Spires. They prefer playing fire over frost.
I want to point out that Dorky doesn't say he talked with some mages. He said he tried to talk to some mages. Dorky is very careful with his words.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not too bothered by moving around a tier or two on these mage specs.
But
Just
okay,
put in
but
like a
then
high B,
all
low
right,
A, something like
we'll
that.
say high B. All right,
Okay.
Arms Warrior.
Ooh,
I
let's
had
see.
them in the B tier. I actually don't think that Arms is particularly
That's
bad.
fair.
I don't think that they're like I don't think that you're like, holy shit, this is the best for every single dungeon. I do think that they're maybe one of the best specs for Theater of Pain even still, but beyond that, they're pretty middling in a lot of other cases, which middling for Mythic Plus means you're probably not going to see them.
Yeah, Dorky is as the only team to ever play an Arms Warrior in Shadowlands MDI. How do you feel about the spec?
I don't know how it is now.
Okay.
Dude, what Dorky's answer is literally our team and how our thoughts were of Arms Warrior. We're like, yo, let's go. All right, it's Theater of Pain, and Cryptix is like, yo, dude, Arms Warrior is so fucking good at Theater of Pain, and we're all just like, are you gonna play Arms Warrior? He's like, oh yeah, dude, Arms Warrior, cleave, blah, blah, just Arms Warrior shit. No one knows anything he's talking about, and we're just like, yeah, man, all right, Arms Warrior and Theater of Pain sounds great.
I honestly
Yeah.
don't know, but yeah, I mean, Cryptix told me that.
Yeah, Cryptix, that's literally it, right? Cryptix told us, I don't know, like, maybe it's good. No one knows how to play Arms Warrior.
That's
So
the
I'm not
thing,
too
yeah.
sure.
Like, I think in a world without Fury, I could maybe be convinced to put Arms even in an A, but with Fury around, I do think B is a fair place for Arms because it's just
Yeah.
like, I don't know. That's always one of the hardest things with making tier lists is whenever a spec is like good, but there's a better spec. How do you factor that in? I think like taking a tier off, putting
Okay.
it down in B seems fair to me.
So then do we want to just slam the Fury Warrior into A then?
Ooh.
As a comparison of the two of those? I think
I don't know if I agree with. I haven't played with that many Fury Warriors yet this tier. Let's see what Dorky has to say.
I'm kind of okay with this. Fury Warrior does a lot of damage. I played with the one on the PTR. They were looking pretty solid.
Yo, Chicken Nuggets, thanks for the Prime sub, friend. I appreciate it. By the way, sorry for the ads, guys. It just like it auto plays. There's not much I can do.
Yeah,
I think
I
they're pretty okay.
love Fury. Like
Yeah.
Fury does big damn. It requires your tank to be making a lot of threat on pull, but as long as your tank can do that, then Fury is having a grand old time.
Dorky, Fury is in the same tier as Frost Mage and Destrolock. I think Dorky probably sees this now and is probably questioning everything now.
And does a lot of damage, and it does a lot of single target too.
Yeah, another thing too is I do think we're getting into that point where we start playing with more physical classes or like battle shout classes, and that's definitely something really big that a warrior brings.
Yeah,
play.
and actually rally if you're trying to do high keys, right?
Yeah.
All right. Assassination Rog. I actually don't know. I had this one. I don't even see where I have it listed.
It's a rogue, so we can put it in the A tier at the very least.
Oh, I have it in A tier.
I put Sin in B.
Sin Rogue. Dorky just says it's a rogue, so put it in the A tier. Fucking true. That's a big true.
But I'm fine with A. The reason I put them in B is because I think they're going to be I think they're going to be a lot less of them than there will be of the rogue spec that I put in S. But I'm fine with A as well. Yeah,
And then,
again, I think it's just a minor difference.
Yeah, all right. So I'm down to put them in B and then put S for subtlety up in S.
Yep.
Yeah, so S is for subtlety.
Yep.
You can tell because that's what the spec starts with.
Yeah,
but
okay,
yeah,
so
I mean,
explain why.
it does so much stuff, and it's providing such a useful damage profile that basically by having a subtlety rogue in your group, you solve so many problems and free up everybody else to do their thing. You solve a huge amount of priority damage on a lot of pulls, right? The highest health target just takes a bunch more damage when you have a subtlety rogue, and you have all of this rogue utility coming off of them as well, and they just do solid single target damage as well. We've seen some seasons, right, like BFA season 4, where you're willing to take quite a hit on damage to play a rogue, and you don't.
This also is proves why this is a tier list for plus 30s, because yeah, in a plus 30, the highest health mob is going to be taking a lot more damage. But if you're doing a 15 key, that sub rogue is spamming black powder. If you're in a 15 key, it's either A, the sub rogue is spamming black powder, even though there's a mob that's really high health, or B, you look at the meters and you're just like, why do we have an assassination rogue? That's the other thing that happens too. You're like, wait a second, why do we have an ass rogue in our team?
Don't have to with subtlety in its current state. It is doing solid damage. The overall is going to look a little lower because it's in a lot of polls it's doing prio instead of AoE. But honestly, its AoE isn't even that bad this expansion.
Their force set
it was actually pretty solid.
Their force set's very good for sustained AoE too, which I mean that's been sub's weakness like the whole entire expansion, and they're probably still going to be third place in DPS for especially if you're playing with like a frost mage and a demo lock.
Like,
they're going to be third
a lot of
place.
these pulls. They should be.
All right, Tettle's kind of figured out. Look at that.
Like,
Tettle's kind of figured out the meta there. He's like, oh, if you're playing sub rogue with demo lock and frost mage, all right, point for Tettle's on the board there. He's like, all right, frost mage, sub rogue, demo lock, okay.
Like they should be casting the eviscerates instead of the black powders.
Or
That's what
Destro
makes the dungeon faster. It just looks bad on details, but like that's
actually
really contributing.
Looking bad on details is like the craziest thing for people to conceptualize.
Yeah,
because like I go into James's chat a lot and I see all these idiots in his chat. Like, I'm not trying to flame his viewers.
Where did that come from? I go to JPC's chat, and there are so many fucking dumb idiots in there. I'm not trying to make fun of them. But there's just so many dumb idiots in there. All right, let's hear what he has to say.
Chat a lot, and I see all these idiots in his chat. Like, I'm not trying to flame his viewers or anything, but I swear he caters to the dumbest viewers.
They do say that viewers take.
Dude, I'm not trying to flame his viewers, but every single one of his viewers is so dumb. Dude, what? Where did that come from? Holy shit, dude.
After their streamer, yeah.
Yeah, that is. Okay, dude. But yeah, like the amount of people who are like, lol, why bring rogue doing less than holy paladin damage is like beyond me. Like, are you kidding me? Nobody understands rogue at all. No, like absolutely no one understands. I mean, even I underrated sub rogue. Like at the beginning of season 2, I'm like, yeah, sub rogue's probably like pretty good, but I don't know if it's gonna be that good. And it just turns out that it's the most OP thing ever, and we missed out so much by not playing it during MDI.
Their prio damage is just not legal.
Yeah, like you can literally delete rogue's utility and it would still be that good.
Okay. Next up, we got Outlaw, which I think if we put Sin and B, it would be criminal to rank Outlaw. Anything higher, I think it's maybe even below Assassination. If I had to actually place it, I think their damage is like not great.
What?
When I made my tier list, I put them right next to each other in B. So I do agree that they're right around the same.
I would never put a rogue below B. So
I think that's a fair play.
Yeah, and like we were talking about with arms, right? Like in a world where subtlety didn't exist, most groups I think would have either a Sin rogue or an outlaw rogue, right? Like that would bring it up to A. So it's just a question of like how you want to factor that into the tier list. And I think the B is fair, but I wouldn't blame you for putting it in A either.
Okay. Next up, Feral Druid.
Oh no. All right, Young Booma, F Swag, all the feral druids in the chat, put your earmuffs on. I'm sorry.
Where did you have Feral Dratnos?
I put them in the D tier.
Put them in the dumpster.
This is a spec that the damage profile is not good for M+, and the utility profile is also not good.
You can just say the damage is not good.
Yeah, I mean, well, the damage... So the thing is, on PTR for a while, they were actually kind of owning because their set bonus was
but I mean, even then, that was
massively
cheesy as
OP.
hell.
But yeah,
it was great for the clips, but it wasn't actually good in keys.
Right. It was good if you were pulling like 40 mobs or something, and then they soft capped it at 8. And then it was still pretty good in like 5-8 target pulls on their cooldowns, but outside of their cooldowns, they were really weak. And now they are weak in and outside of their cooldowns, which is not a good place to be.
For them to be a druid, they probably... the worst class in the game.
I can't think of a worser class
I can't think of a worse
maybe.
class.
I do also understand. All right, next up, we got the Moonkin. Dorky, where do you have bound?
Hold on, I have to find this. So you guys ready for story time? So the other day, I was hanging out in my good friend Hippo's chat. Hippo is currently playing Feral Druid he's actually playing Feral Druid in Tettle's Guild. Tettle's Guild is Might of... Are they in Zul'jin? I don't remember what guild they are. And I was watching Hippo, and he was getting a lot of externals, and he was getting like PI, and he was actually owning. Like Hippo's a really good raider. He raided for BGG for a long time, and then while we're talking about Feral's damage, and he's talking, so some guy posts in his chat while we're talking about Feral damage. Here, I'll make it bigger. Hold on, how do I make it bigger? This, yeah. I'm not trying to be toxic because I main Feral myself, but if Feral is top damage, it means the other players aren't really good. And again, I'm not trying to be toxic, but it's just weird to see Feral at the top with that gap in damage. he just drops this paragraph in Hippo's chat, like in Might's progression. Might is like a top 100 like Hall of Fame guild, and they're just raiding, and this guy just drops this bomb in Hippo's chat, and I'm just like, oh yeah, we should maybe we should blurt out his name, but I don't know. I just read this and I'm just like, dude, this is the greatest thing ever. And I just immediately just copy it and just paste it and just put it right in the chat, because that's what you do when you read something great in Twitch chat. And then then I think I copy pasted it. And yeah, the first time chat is the icing on top. Yeah, he's a long time Feral lurker in Hippo's chat, but he really had to speak up for that one.
Balance.
I've been playing Boomkin a lot. I really like it. Before for nerf, I would have said it's an S, but right now I'll put it in like a low A maybe. It does really good damage. Like I think it's got the good type of damage. It's sort of like Demo Lock, or it's like a scuffed sub rogue basically, which is not a bad thing. Like I would love to be a scuffed sub rogue. Are you kidding me? That's one of the best classes in the game. Like it does solid AOE. It's like very consistent now. You can just have Incarn for basically every single pull. It does really good single target. Valenka still has some value, not a whole lot, but it's still some value. And Boomkin utility is always really useful. So
I believe this was before a set of nerfs too. I might be wrong, but
there's not a lot of classes that are actually like. If you said Frost Mage was still gonna be OP, Survival Hunter still OP, etc., then sure, Boomkin would probably be worse. But there's not a lot of good specs at the moment, and I do think Boomkin deserves that spot to be like sort of up there.
I think bottom of A is fair.
Works for me.
That. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Hunters. We got Serve, which was OP for all of PTR. I think
Where do you guys think Dorky puts Survival Hunter? Dorky's a man of the people. I think he goes with Year of the Spear, S tier for Survival Hunter. I mean, he has to, right?
I think they still do pretty good AoE, and I had them in A, but
yeah, let's see, Dorky, how much on the hype train are you? It's an S.
Now notice this right here. Dratnos has now picked up on Tettle's strategy. So let's see. Now watch Dratnos carefully avoid ranking survival and waiting to see where Dorky places it. Watch this. This was good from Dratnos. I like this move. Watch this here.
PTR. I think they still do pretty good AoE, and I had them in A, but
yeah, let's see, Dorky, how much on the hype train are you? It's an S. All right.
Okay, so I don't know if it's gonna stay that way, but if it's staying the way it is right now in PTR, at least from last I've tested like a week ago, not even a week ago, a couple of days ago.
So my understanding is there are still some bugs
there's
in how it currently operates, but
some of them also negatively affects it.
Right, and some bugs just when you're talking about a spec like survival, like some bugs just make it to live and never get changed and are just part of how the spec functions for like years. So definitely could be.
So assuming how it is right now, I don't know if it's going to change, which it probably will change. I mean, when the whole survival actually going to be good. Assuming how it is right now, it's easily an S tier. It's the highest damage class easily. It does everything. It does good single target, the best, like some of the best single target. It does great AoE.
So for S, you'd be comfortable
damage too.
You'd be comfortable like predicting that the top of the leaderboard is going to be mostly survival hunter groups?
Oh yeah, easily if it's.
You think it's going to be popular?
Wow, Dorky with the huge bold prediction there. A majority of the top groups on the leaderboard will contain a survival hunter.
this season too. What the? Okay.
Oh yeah, especially all the Windwalker players from before are all gonna be Royal Survivor Hunters. Because like, what the hell else are they gonna play?
All right,
The mage is already
All of the Windwalker players are gonna re-roll the Survival Hunter because what the hell else are they gonna play? Yeah, and it has been nerfed since this video, I think. It got nerfed before this, and there were, like, bugs and stuff. But, yeah, I mean, let's be honest, okay? Is every Windwalker from Season 2 of Shadowlands a reroller? How many of you know... Type 1 in the chat if you know somebody who played a shit spec and then rerolled to Windwalker in Season 2 and is probably going to reroll to something else this season.
taken. The sub-role's already taken. I mean, what are they gonna play? Windwalker
You
again?
I had them in A. I'm down to be convinced.
I'd be surprised if it gets nerfed.
Yo, Frog Actual, thanks for the sub, friend.
Tier, so let's.
You're the spear, baby. Let's get it.
You're the spear. Let's get it. I had it in A as well in mine, but I'm fine with this. Yeah.
Also, look at the icons. It looks just like the sub rogues.
God, it does. Yeah.
Look at the icon. It looks just like the sub rogue. I remember when I was like, when I very first started making videos, like at the beginning of Shadowlands, I would actually get confused between those two icons because I never played either one of these classes.
I think they're just two people in like slightly different bushes.
Yeah. All right. I had them in A, but I think they may be a B tier spec.
Ooh.
So their AoE is not bad, especially with their 4-set. But I worry about like their ability to be able to do other things inside of dungeons. We saw being pretty popular in season 1 of Shadowlands, but then they started to fall off just because of hunter issues. I think that they may be a B tier spec currently.
No, I think A is fine, honestly.
Okay. You think their damage is good enough to warrant an A tier spec?
Yeah, definitely. So something that people always say about hunters is that they can't survive, but I just don't think that's true at all. I feel like hunters have always survived just fine. Look at the End of Legion, for example. End of Legion, people were still playing Hunters. When it was like the most one-shotty thing ever.
Yeah, you and I both played it that season, Tettles, right? Yeah.
Yeah, End of BFA also, when people were stacking verse corruptions on the god classes like
that's what
Demon
I meant.
Hunter, Rogue, Mage, and they're still playing BM Hunters without verse corruption. Like the thing is, generally in high M+, you'll have that one class that you can always cater to. And because of how Feign Death and Turtle works, you can cheese a lot of mechanics. So there are a lot of one-shot mechanics that you can just send it off to someone else. And people do say that they have like lack of sustain, which is sort of true, but I feel like it's something that's not really keeping them from being pretty okay.
Dorky's dropping some like really, really heavy knowledge here that like it's hard to understand, but from playing season 4 of BFA, it makes a whole lot of sense in the fact that like, yes, being able to live is really important, right? But if you're playing with a rogue and mage, then you are that one class where everyone can kind of babysit. And at the same time, like you have Feign and you have Turtle, so you can kind of like get your way out of a lot of situations. So there's not that many situations where you get one shot. Like for example, like, okay, the third boss inspires, right? Let's just say hypothetically that boss one shots you. Like, well, you can just Feign and like Turtle. Like you can Feign, and then if you get targeted twice, you can Turtle. And like you can get yourself out of a lot of those situations. And then on top of that, like, if you're playing with a paladin, either a tank or a healer, he can bop you, he can like lay on hands you or whatever. Like there's a lot of stuff that people can do to protect you, and there almost always is room for one class to be that class that like gets babysat, right? And in BFA it was sort of just the fire mage, even though fire mage is pretty durable too. You have an immune and you have a cheat death. Like that was how it was in BFA, where the fire mage would play a bunch of corruption and you would babysit the fire mage. And it is true that you have that room to be able to babysit one class. This is like some super fucking advanced shit, but it's important to kind of think about. There are a few mechanics that are tough, like for example, like, okay, last boss of Plaguefall, right? The rain. But at the same time, like, well, as a paladin, you can just dispel that guy every time, right? Imagine if you have a prop paladin, you can just dispel the hunter every single rain, right? Like that's part of the reason why prop paladin's so good, because like little things like that, the first boss of Plaguefall you can dispel every time. Also, TGX, thanks for the 2-month resub. Marin Jock, thanks for the 11-month resub. Ranic96, thanks for the sub, and also an Anonymous, thanks for the 100 bits. And still waiting for a Ventor stream. Look, as much as I love Ventor, him not streaming I think was a big part of my stream, because me and him were the only two people pushing high keys in BFA as Druid. for a really long time, and the fact that he was number 1 druid, he was ahead of me for a lot of the season, but because he didn't stream, everyone was like, well, I'm just gonna have to watch this yummy guy, this guy that plays with the bear. Yo, Kelko, thanks for the sub as well, I appreciate it.
Their single target's pretty bad. Their single target's not great, but it's not the most important thing. I do worry, like, if you played them with like a serve plus a subtlety rogue or 2 S tier specs, it would be like a terrible comp. Like, you're playing perhaps one of the lowest utility comps in the game if you're playing serve,
put it that way.
Serve hunter, hunter, sub.
Okay,
but
you would never play that.
I do think they feel more to me like the Arms Warriors demo locks than the Fury Warriors, the Destro locks. So
I also think it's a bit hard to compare though, because like I do feel like Survival Hunter is probably gonna get nerfed, and then in that situation, then sure, marksman.
Yeah, we got to assume that there's not nerfs coming, but definitely if there are, that would be big. I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with A. I had them in B personally, but I'm kind of
down to concede. I'm actually kind of down to concede a B on this, because like the more I'm really thinking about it, it's kind of hard to make a comp with them in it with like just the utility of the whole, like the season as a whole, I feel like. Okay. Beast Mastery Hunter. I had them in C. They only do single target damage. Their AoE is still pretty bad. I don't think they're on the same plane as like Af and Feral. I think they're a bit better, but not enough better to where I'm happy with them.
Agreed.
Works for me. C is where I had them as well.
All right, cool. Elemental Shaman. Where did you have Ellie, Dratnus?
So far, this whole expansion, people have greatly overrated Ellie Shaman. Everyone said that Ellie Shaman is good, and they sort of are good. Like, in a pug situation, they can be really strong, but the problem with Ellie Shaman is they're sort of like the jack of all trades, like master of none. Like, they're good in AoE, but they're not as good in AoE as a class like Destrolock or even like Mage, maybe a little bit, but like for right now, they're not as good as Survival, they're not as good as Destrolock, and then they're just not that good on single target, right? Like, they're not good enough in AoE to be worth it. The one thing that's nice about AoE, or that about Ellie Shaman, is they sort of have this safety net. So bringing AG and Fey Transfusion and having a Curse Dispel and a short kick, like in Pugs, I think Ellie Shaman's a great class to bring to your group. And if you're looking for just more safety, they also have Bloodlust. So like, I'm not hating on Ellie Shaman, but in terms of a class that you bring to high keys, that's why I think you don't see them a lot in high keys. Also, NelXM88, thanks for the 3-month resub. I appreciate it.
I put Ellie in B. The set bonus is actually quite good for M+, so the damage is quite good, but I don't think it's enough to break them into the meta, as it were, right? Into the A and S range. I know what you think though, Dorky. I don't know if you've had the chance to play with this spec on PTR.
Let's see what Dorky
I
thinks.
played with a couple of them. Played with like DJ Frush and a couple other guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say like roughly B. I would be tempted to put in C too, but I think B is sort of fair.
I think they're definitely on the higher end of B.
Yeah, I feel like the next one would be a C, so I think B is a fine one.
Next one being Enhance?
Next one being Enhance. You think Enhance is C? You don't think it's D?
I think it's C as well.
Yeah, I think it's better than those two dumpster specs.
The nice thing about Enhance is like you do a lot of single target on it this patch, which is nice in M+, but it's nice enough for me to hold it out of D tier, given that they also do some other useful stuff. But
yeah, D is like no redeeming qualities. Why bring this kind of thing?
Yeah, arguably Feral does good single target as well, but like it's a lot harder to do good single target without having like a bunch of setup globals, and that kind of stuff is really painful in M+.
These guys are really low utility though for dungeons. I feel like just generally Enhances.
I mean, it's about as good as.
Is Enhance low utility? All the Enhances are going to come out in the chat and be mad, like say no. But I think Enhance isn't that bad. I think a big problem with Enhanced single target is just that they do pretty good single target, but the problem is a lot of what makes them do, like, what makes them bringable in raid is the fact that you can bring Wind Fury Totem and you're buffing a bunch of other melee, but like, you never have more than just a sub rogue, right? Like, okay, so even the Enhances are saying bad utility. Okay, so I was thinking you have Lust, you have a kick, you have a Curse to Spell, you have some heals. Like, I feel like it's not that bad. You have an AoE stun. I'm not saying they're high utility, but I feel like if you say most classes are bad utility, I think most of the time that class gets Mage. But Yeah, I think what Ranger said is true, right? They're just super average, you know? Like, they're fine. If you have a good enhance that you play with, there's nothing wrong with playing enhance, but, like, they're just, you know, they're not really they're sort of like Ellie in the sense that they're not, like, they're just better melees that you can bring.
Ellie Shaman's not too far off.
Ellie gets a better Earth Ellie, right? But
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
like it's actually kind of awkward with their foresight even to use.
Yeah, it's
Yo,
really not
Gord,
that bad.
thanks for the 2 month
Yeah, and
resub.
Ellie being ranged like
Thanks for the
Thunderstorm. There's a couple other things that they get relative to Enhance, but I don't know. Wind Fury is a lot of damage potentially, so.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm down to leave him in C. Seems good enough for me.
Okay.
All right, we have the Death Knights.
Ooh, I like DKs.
The DK duo, which
Ooh.
Dorky's gonna gaslight us and probably rank these too high.
Okay, dude.
Okay, so let's say you're playing a class, right, and you're a content creator. What's the correct gaslighting strategy? Should you tell everyone your class is good so that you think people invite you? Or should you say that your class is bad so that you hope to get buffs? Because I feel like most people want you to say the class is bad. Like, I think J.B is the perfect example of like a community class gaslighter, right? Like, JB always plays druid, he always owns, he always does super high keys, but at the same time all he does is just talk about how bad druid is, and then talk, like, I think the key part if you want to be a community lead gaslighter is you need to talk about how shitty the class is, but then still complain about it all the time, right? Like, you have to show everyone, like, yeah, my class, like, you have to, with your results, you need to prove that the class is good, but at the same time, with your words, try and convince people that the class needs buffs, and then anyone that plays that class is a Giga Chad. Like, I think that's the key that I learned. And sometimes I think I make a mistake and, like, I talk up the class too much, but really people want you to play the class and then talk about how bad the class is to sort of verify, like, oh yeah, you guys are all really good players. Like, this class should be buffed and you guys are all good players.
All right, so let's say Unholy first. I think Unholy is straight up bad. I wish Unholy was good, but I swear they've done bad things with Unholy this patch, this expansion in general. Their tier set does absolutely nothing for M+ for the most part. Like, you do more single target with it, you have more execute, but that's not very good in M+. So they're like basically gaining no powers for the most part. There's been like a couple of builds that people have been speculating with Night Fae and Bursting Swords and stuff. I've tried a bunch of different things with Unholy and I just can't get it to work. I feel like C is like a fine one to put it.
Yeah,
is that good?
Hey, look, if Dorky
Frost,
can't get it to
however,
work, then you can't.
I think it's really hard to say because Frost is one of those specs where I feel like it does amazing damage. Like, the damage is easily A or possibly even S.
Okay.
Like, Frosty Kid does crazy amounts of damage. I don't know if you guys have seen. The problem is Breath is not a very practical build to play in M+. It's just not suited for M+. It's more for a raid where it's like scripted encounters. You know exactly when stuff are gonna come out, and then you can press your breath and stuff.
Yeah.
You know when the mechanic's gonna happen. But like in M+, I have like the most Windwalker brain whenever I play Frost DK, because it's like, all right, well, my breath is rolling. You know, I gotta just kick. I gotta press AMS to stand in stuff. I gotta, you know, not like my healer's dead. I'm not pressing B-res. Are you kidding me? B-resing during breath. All that stuff.
Windwalker brain.
Or like, yeah. Like if your tank tells you to stun, I'm like, hell no, I ain't using that global to stun. I need to keep my breath up.
All right, that's fair.
So it's one of those.
I'm in my breath. I'm not gonna res. Yeah. Did you guys see? So we were in a raid yesterday. We were doing heroic Halandras, and one of our tanks died. And apparently, Yoda's story is that he rezzed, but the tank didn't accept. But from my POV, our tank was dead, and Yoda was in his incarn and wasn't rezzing. And I got tilted that Yoda didn't res, and I was playing priest, and I just gripped Yoda into the beams and tried to kill him because he wasn't rezzing our tank in his incarn. I'm just like, dude, are you kidding me right now? Like, I don't care what kind of damage you have, just res the stupid tank. Allegedly, he claims that he res the tank and the tank just didn't accept, but I was so frustrated by it that I literally just gripped our Moonkin into the beam to try and kill him because he didn't res.
It's like, people have been saying like two-handed Frost is really good. I haven't tried it since they fixed some stuff because the spec was buggy. They fixed a couple of things with it, which makes it do a lot more damage. So possibly A, I don't really know. But for now, yeah, I think B.
I think B
I'll
is
put it
fair.
in high B though.
High B, okay.
I think it's
it's
like
pretty underrated.
I think it's like unpopular, which I think is going to be
Yeah,
definitely
agree.
to detriment.
That's a
that's
lot of
true.
these classes, right? That's B, right? Classes that could be good but are just unpopular. Frost DK, Outlaw Rogue, Sin Rogue, Arcane Mage, Demo Lock, Fire Mage, right? A lot of these classes could be good but are just unpopular, either because people don't play them or because their specs have better, or their classes have better options.
For sure too.
I'm fine with B for this though. Yeah, I had them in C, but I'm pretty convinced. I had them near the top of my C, but I mean I do respect the damage. I
Their
just
damage
yeah,
is insane.
it's like
They
a
don't
spec
do
that,
anything else.
right? And
So
there are
easy
other
breezier
specs that
thanks to
do
the 7-month
damage and
resub.
don't cause quite as much brain.
Are they
you know,
better
brain
than
power
Arms?
sometimes.
Are they better than Arms Warrior? Like,
Yeah, for
that's-
sure. I mean, if we're gonna compare,
Okay.
yeah, their damage is definitely like their damage is up there with
Arms
A and
is
S,
Arms
but
is
they just
certainly
lack
like
everything else.
yeah, Arms is certainly like a class or a spec that does damage and doesn't do anything else.
Well, Arms doesn't do as much damage. That's why I would put them over.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Havoc Demon Hunter. I had them in A.
Oh, A?
They do a pretty balanced amount of damage. They can also play either Venthyr or Fae. I think that they're
The nice thing about Havoc is that their damage, talking about, a lot of people, we use the word damage profile. So Havoc, number 1, is really tanky, lives higher keys. Number 2, it does AoE damage and it does single target damage. I think it isn't quite good enough to stack up to some of these other classes. I don't know if I'd put it as A, but that's what he means by that, is like, for example, Enhanced Shaman, it's like, well, it does a good single target, but it doesn't really do that much AoE, right? And then you have like a class like Ellie Shaman that does pretty good AoE, but doesn't do any good single target, right? And that's what's nice about Havoc, is although it isn't quite on the level of some of these classes, you're very versatile, right? There's not really like that many like, oh, this is a really bad week to play a Demon Hunter, right? Like a Demon Hunter is a pretty good like all around DPS. And again, this is another great class where, yeah, in the highest keys you might not invite a Demon Hunter, but like, number 1, Demon Hunter is good in a lot of scenarios. Number 2, it's really easy to play, or like easier to play than some other specs. And so I don't ever like, I'm always happy inviting Demon Hunters into my pugs.
I think that they're probably going to be playing Fae this tier for Mythic Plus, is what it sounded like to me, even though Venthyr has, like, at least for the whole entire expansion, been the AoE Covenant, so it kind of surprised me to hear that they may be potentially playing Fae for Mythic Plus.
Fae's been good much of the time, especially with the thing about Fae that's really nice next patch is you get like a Covenant Legendary that was
I've only
Fist
been
for M plus
seeing
or Great for M plus,
have or
plus another good legendary.
Evade and
a lot of specs
Cycle play
that had
Venthyr.
Covenant Legendaries as one they were already wearing aren't getting another good one, but Havoc is.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about Fae Havoc as well.
I don't think Havoc is very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've
Dorky
played with a
going
lot
in.
of Havocs. Yeah, it's every single Havoc complaint. I mean, Havoc's always complain about it, but I have played with a lot of Havocs. I don't think it's very good.
Okay. So
It's
Dorky
AoE
coming
is
in
just way
hard.
too lackluster. Like the damage on the class is not great.
So
If
here's-
anything, it's like similar situation
no.
to how it is.
Hold on,
right
I have to
now
mute my
before.
mic
Like,
because
how would you
I
guys say
broke
Havoc
my
is right now?
stand.
A tier.
In 9.1.
I think A as well. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Survivable. I think they do. I don't think they excel in any specific damage profile, but I think they bring like really good middling damage. And
Target.
yeah, they're good at single target. But they're also like decent at AoE. They're not the best at AoE, and they're specifically not great at burst, which can hold them back a little bit for some pulls in
Depends
particular.
on the
But
build, right? But yeah, when you factor in 5% of the Frost Mage damage is theirs, like that's so much damn.
I think for me, the reason that they're A is like they have really great survivability, and like I think it's also one of those things that you're going to see them brought to high keys because they are able to kind of make it work. And while a lot of these were ranking on like theory, like where they should be placed, they've played at like a maximum level. I do think that like once you start pushing to the highest keystone level, some of these specs are going to fall off a little bit, and I don't think that's going to be the case for Havoc.
All right, so
I mean, if we
I'm
put
just,
it that way, I feel like it's got to be B.
I think I'm coming
Okay.
around on your side here because I've just took a quick look at the current Raider.io leaderboards and yeah, there's not many Havocs in the.
Oh, I'm
anywhere
just
near the
looking at
top
this tier
here.
list. I'm seeing like Fire Mage and Frost DK and Demo Lock. I feel like all these specs are just better than Havoc. I would be tempted to even put Havoc in C, but B is fine for me.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's a very good spec. Like a lot of these upper classes just do it better than Havoc. The only real redeeming factor is Chaos Brand.
All right, Rep Paladin C tier. Yeah.
No, just put it in D. Honestly,
I put him in C, but I
just put him in the dumpster, man.
I'm fine
Holy
with
shit,
D,
put
I
him in the
guess. I mean,
dumpster?
it is a spec that definitely needs some some immediate urgent developer assistance.
This is one of the class where if it actually did damage,
awful.
it could easily be up there because Paladin utility, right? It's like I've said this entire time.
Yeah,
But
one problem with
I don't know,
Paladin
like-
utility is when prop Paladin is S, when Holy Paladin is good.
All right, one thing: if you're a rep paladin, sorry, and you're not happy with the state of ret, blame PvP. All right, rep paladins are OP in PvP. They've been OP in PvP for the whole expansion, and that's the reason why they're not good in PvE. Rep paladins, it feels like there's no balance between making them fair in PvP and also good in PvE, so they end up just being dog shit in PvE permanently.
Right? Is like how valuable is the second or third?
Well, it's actually
Paladin
I
into a
think it's
group?
fine actually to have 2 paladins. There are a lot of situations where you do
All
want
right.
2 paladins, but the biggest
Well-
thing by far is you can't choose your damage. You're either doing AoE or you're doing single target.
These
And-
people don't do any AoE, or these people only do like 1 damage profile. At least Ret, you can kind of.
Okay, but the thing is, like, you know, like you go into an AoE pull, you're doing the most dirt amount of priority damage in general. Like, let's say you're going into like a pack of a shard. Like, I think
It's going to the
just not a good
dumpster.
spec.
It's going to the dumpster.
Yeah,
All right,
just
it's
put
fine.
it- yeah, it's going to the dumpster, man. I mean, I guess like C and D honestly isn't really too far apart from each other. Like,
Yeah,
Dude,
I don't
definitely
carry
not.
the
Yeah, same
right
thing.
between those.
I'm not gonna sit here and defend Ret Paladin. They need a they need a buff. Or like their 4 set was like criminally undertuned. I think it's like the biggest issue with Ret.
oh, yeah,
Generally.
yeah.
Shadow Priest, which I had in like A before the nerfs, and then they got absolutely shot into the ground, and I ended up putting them in B for the context of this tier list, but they also, I could see them being a C tier spec. They do bring a decent. They bring group support. I don't want to necessarily call it utility, but they do
All right, my
things
mic
for
is
their
fixed.
group that is pretty
Sorry
good
about
with like
that.
Massive Spell and Bursting Weeks. That's kind of nice. They can play Fae for Fae Guardians if they really want to. But how they do damage on AoE is kind of scuffed. Is what I would
Yep.
say.
Yeah, I would say that's like pretty fair. If we're like talking about like purely life keys, then sure, yeah, they're definitely not that great. But you know, if we're adding MDI and TGP to the context, they definitely shoot up a little bit to like B and possibly
Just
even
because
A,
of
'cause
Necrotic
Only
Wake.
because of Necrotic Wake.
they
don't think that's
bring,
fair.
They bring the priest utility that you don't want from your healer. It's got potential.
I mean, in Necrotic Wake, you definitely play prop Pally Holy Priest, right? There's no way you play Shadow Priest.
Let's just say that.
Yeah,
But
think
in
we're
the
living in
context
the
of just live
past there.
keys, yeah, it's pretty mediocre.
I'm down for C on this one. I think.
I'm down for that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think for like context of TGP, like you're gonna see one
Yeah.
of these. It's gonna be in Necrotic Wake, and they're gonna look like not that bad, but beyond that, like it's really, really, really hard to bring these guys.
I mean, even in like halls and stuff, it's pretty solid because it's got the priority damage while AoEing. It's one of those classes
Yeah.
that can actually nuke down one target while doing a ton of AoE damage. Something that
Is that true? I hate to disagree with Dorky about DPS, but I thought that's the whole part about why Priest is bad, is that on AoE you just spam Searing Nightmare. Like, I guess it's true in your Void form. You can do single target if you really want to, but I feel like on AoE you're just spamming Searing Nightmare, no? Tier set, SFP lets you hit one target. Okay, so yeah, I just don't know what I'm talking about. That's why I don't talk about DPS.
I was saying like red lax.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Windwalker Monk, the final spec. Man, they look really bad coming into this tier. Where do you have them,
Windwalker dead.
Dratnos?
I still put them fairly high on mine, but you know, I have some regrets with how you guys are sounding about it for sure. I had them in A.
Oh wow,
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I think A is fine. Yeah, I think A.
It's
Okay, all
fine,
right,
all
Poggers.
right.
Phew.
Yeah, because it's already a really strong spec to begin with. It's just not gaining as much, and Bone Dust got nerfed.
Yeah,
the
But
The
like
Bone Dust nerf
it's
is,
still
like-
pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that big a nerf, right? It doesn't scale with crit anymore, but it does have more base damage. I don't know. And like,
I think they said it was like roughly a
Windwalker's
20%
dead.
nerf or something. I don't remember the exact numbers. That's what I've heard.
not to their over, like not 20% of their
Oh no,
damage,
no,
I had
right?
just
them-
Bone Dust
Yeah,
damage.
yeah.
Bone Dust, yeah.
I had them in top of B because I feel like their single target damage is like that bad coming into this patch that I was really
It is
concerned
pretty
about the like they are one of the lowest single target damage specs in the game, and like I don't know how much changes between like their Mythic Plus and their raid build, but even in raid they're probably like one of the, if not the lowest single target damage in raid as well. And so like I could definitely see them still being A, because their AoE, while it did get nerfed, it's still really good. It's just how it is. I think that it's kind of a crime to put them in the same tier as a Frost Mage and Demo Lock, which is why I had them in B. But I don't think they're like a C tier spec or something. But if you guys are really confident in the A, I'm down.
Yeah, I would say low A. Low A is honestly.
All right, low A. All right, I'm down for bottom of A.
Along with Boomkin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very reasonable to me. All right, anything else that we want to change before we're finalizing the DPS list?
Seems pretty good.
Seems good to me. Yeah.
Personally, I would maybe add like a couple more higher, but this is like sort of fair.
Dorky would add a couple more higher. Which one do you think he's talking about? Probably Demo Lock and Fire Mage. Thinking about which ones Dorky would want to move up. I don't know if he would move up any of these specs, but I think Demo Lock and Frost Mage he would add up. Or Fire Mage, sorry. And Tropia, thanks for the 8-month resub. I appreciate it. And someone asking, yeah, we're actually just wrapping up the tier list.
I'm really surprised that we
and
got
tanks
serve up in
earlier.
here, but I'm really down for clicks.
Survival Hunter is OP as hell, man. I swear to God.
All right.
What
If
spec
that
is
class
S
doesn't
tier?
get nerfed or fixed, I mean, it's definitely getting nerfed or fixed, right?
Surely
Maybe.
copium. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Dorky. Again, if you want, you can check out the written versions of these.
Okay, so no, I'm not gonna do too much about DPS move. I'm not gonna do too much about DPS, but I was supposed to remind you to message my thumbnail guy. I did, thank you. I did yesterday.
On Wowhead.
So let's I'm not gonna talk too much about DPS, but let's talk about what I think. And most of what I think is just has to do with the updates and the things that have happened. I don't actually have my own thoughts, but here's what I would say. So after the survival nerfs, I would say the only class I would put in S tier would be Sub Rogue. And then here's my A tier. I think I would move Fury, Moonkin, and Windwalker out into the B tier. And I think I would have survive right now. This is what it feels like. I might be biased about who I'm playing with, but I think I have Sub Rogue and then Destro, Frost Mage, Survival. And you can maybe move these specs up here too if you want, because basically these two are the same specs, right? The same classes. You can be a Frost Mage and you can play Fire. You can be a Destro and you can play Demo, right? So when I think of like what's going to exist in the top keys, like if you have a guy who plays Frost Mage for some keys and Fire Mage for some keys, can you really say that this is, you know what I mean? Like I sort of see this being the meta right now. Again, I'm not the best DPS theory crafter, so you probably shouldn't listen to me. So let's look at B tier. I think it's hard. For me, it's hard to differentiate between B, C, and D tier. Let's say, I think, let's do this. Let's remove D tier. So basically, here's my ruling, okay? Here's my ruling. I think S tier means gonna be with every team. A tier means it's probably gonna be in a lot of teams, but it's not necessary. B tier means it's possible to bring, but it's not going to be very common. And C means it's probably never going to be seen, right? So, you know, you might argue that some classes are in the same tier or whatever, but I would sort of just do this. I would just remove D tier because I don't think differentiating between these specs is that important. I think you could play... I don't know if we'd see arms. I think... technically, you could play any of these specs in the top keys if you're good at them and they fit in well. But would you want to bring them? You know, there are better options, I feel like, for all these keys. What does Dorky say? Swap Rogue with Destro, Demo goes up 1. Yeah. And again, right, maybe like Outlaws getting buffed, I think. I don't know how important that's going to be, but this is sort of how I see the tier list. Again, I'm definitely not the leading DPS theory crafter. I'm not. This is just like... my sort of opinion. MDI tier list, I think it's pretty similar. The only difference between an MDI tier list is like there's going to be some classes that are randomly like could be used in some situations because you can. Like for example, talking about like Shadow Priest, I don't think you're going to see any Shadow Priest in like top pushing keys But yeah, MDI would only have S and F tier, right? Like either you bring it or you don't. That's sort of the problem. Or maybe 3 tiers, maybe like you bring it every key, you bring it in 1 key, you bring it in no keys. That's sort of the problem with an MDI tier list. But like, yeah, this is sort of how I see. But again, you don't want to listen to my DPS tier list. That was some pretty good content. We definitely milked that. We definitely milked that. We did a review of